Hi, I'm Mark Powers. Welcome to This Old House. Adding a tile backsplash is a great way to update your kitchen without blowing your budget. But troweling on thinset onto the wall can be a chore, so we skip that part. Instead, we set the tiles on a sticky adhesive mat that bonds to the drywall, or even over an existing backsplash. Pair this easy-to-use mat with pre-mixed grout, and you've got a project you can finish in a weekend. Check out the materials list on this webpage for advice on how much tile, adhesive mat, and grout to buy. We use an arabesque field tile, which takes some finesse to cut and set perfectly plumb. To help, we made a jig out of styrofoam and used a suction cup to get a better grip. Let's take it from the top. Cut the power to the outlets, clean the walls with a degreaser, and protect the countertops with builder's paper. Pop off the receptacle plates and then add an extension ring the same thickness as the tile. Now, stick on the first section of adhesive tile mat underneath the cabinet. We used muscle bound. Tack the top of the mat in place by tapping the corners lightly. Then work the roll down and trim it just above the countertop. Add the rest of the adhesive tile mat sections the same way, covering right over the outlets. We'll come back to those later. Line the edges up so the mat pieces don't overlap. That could ruin the flatness of the backsplash. Continue using full mat pieces, cutting around cabinets as necessary. Then trim pieces of mat to fill in any gaps. Next, slice around the outlets. Once the area you want to tile is covered, bond the mat to the wall by pressing on each section with a grout float for a few seconds. Now for the tile. Lay out the pattern. You want to see that you don't end up with slivers at the corners. Start by finding the center of the wall with this handy tip. Pull the tape measure from one end of the countertop and mark the halfway point from one direction. Then the other. Split the difference between the two marks to find the center of the wall. Start laying tiles on the countertop off that center point and work towards the corner. The tiles on the feature wall butt into the ones on the adjacent wall, so place a tile on edge to account for that. Once all the full tiles are laid out, add spacers between them. Then measure the gap next to the last full tile, which you'll need to adjust the pattern. Now reset your starting point. Use the measurement to shift your first center line, so the course finishes with at least a half-width tile. Peel the lining away from the section of adhesive mat above the new layout line, then transfer your mark up the wall. Use a spacer to represent the grout lines between the tile and the countertop. Now mark a second layout line to make a crosshair and help center the first tile. Time for tile. Center the first tile on your layout lines and press it lightly. Snip the rounded edges off the spacers so they grab better to the tile mat. Continue adding full tiles with the spacers as you fill out the pattern radiating out from the first tile. When you reach an outlet, tap only part of the tile in place so it can come off easily. Mark the notch with a wax pencil. Use a tile saw to cut out the notch, then dry fit the tile before pressing it back in place. Once all the full tiles are set, you can start adding half tiles above the countertop. Cut a 1/2 inch thick square piece of foam in a rectangle slightly larger than the tile. Center the tile on the foam and trace around it with a marker. Cut the shape out, then nestle a tile into the jig to test the fit. Adjust the fence so the blade splits the tile in half. Repeat as needed for the rest of the half tiles. Dry the tiles, then add them to the wall using the spacers and the suction cup. Here's how to turn the corner. The two halves of a corner look best when they equal the width of a full tile. Measure the gap between the last full tile and the edge tile in the corner. Subtract the width of the spacer and cut the tile. Stack the piece onto a full tile, Add the width of a tile to that and strike a line. Cut the return tile at that mark and add it to the corner first. Then fill in the feature wall tile. Once all the tiles are set, press them with a float, adhering them to the mat. With a grout, work in small sections that you can grout and clean in 5 minutes. Push and pull the grout by holding the float at about 45 degrees to the wall and approach the tiles diagonally. Clean the tile in sections using a sponge and water. Rub in a circular motion and take care not to pull grout out of the joints. Repeat until all the residue is gone. Pull up the builder's paper, then stand back and take in the view of your newly transformed kitchen.